Do you want to mix some beautiful fall colors with the paints you already have? Today I'll show you how to create some beautiful fall colors using just your 3 primaries. Then we'll paint these 5 simple fall leaves together, including 3 easy ways to paint veins on your leaves. I'm Jessica from Sunlit Brushstrokes. Let's go ahead and get started. So these are the leaves we're going to be painting today. And if you would like to learn how I drew them, I do have a video last year where I teach you how to draw each of them, and then I colored and painted them in watercolor pencil. So if you watch that video, you'll learn how to do the drawings for these leaves, or you can go over to my Etsy shop and just buy the outlines for them and transfer those outlines onto watercolor paper like I've done today. I've used a couple sheets here. These would be Canson XL or cheaper watercolor paper. And then over here, I have done a few on Arch watercolor paper so that we can kind of compare and play. And there are a couple more complex leaves, and I thought having the more expensive paper might be better for them, but you can do what you want, transfer your leaves however you want, and we're gonna go ahead and get started. For my paint today, I'm gonna work with more of my traditional colors that I usually use, which is Hansa Yellow Deep, Quinacridone Rose, and then I'll use a little bit of Phthalo Blue. Mine is a little messy here, but we're gonna be using those primaries, and I'll show you how to mix fall colors from those. But if you want to see how to mix some fall colors using granulating paint, I will include a link to the video in the description below, where I just recently did some color mixing for fall using granulating colors, and that was a lot of fun. So if you want to use other colors than what I'm using, you can go ahead and do that. But if you would like to learn how to mix fall colors using just your primaries, that's what we're going to do today. So to get started here, I do have my Hansa Yellow Deep. I'm going to add a little water to it. Yes, it is a little bit messy in my palette already, but not too bad. I'm going to just go ahead and get things a little moist. I like M-Gram paint because it stays semi-moist in my palette, but I am in a dry climate, so take that into consideration when you choose your paint. So I've added some water so that I've got that yellow kind of ready to mix, and I'm going to take some of that yellow and bring it over into this center well so I can make some orange. And then I'm going to take my Quinacridone Rose and mix a little of that into my Hansa Yellow Deep here. And it's a beautiful golden color. I actually quite like that color, but I'm going to go ahead and make it even oranger. And then we will go ahead and just take a little of this and mix it over back into this well. I know it's kind of muddy. You can use an extra palette. I do have some plastic palettes here if I need space. But for now, I'm just going to get that orange. And then I'm going to dull it down a tiny little bit by mixing just a touch of the Phthalo Blue. I have a feeling I have too much. It's going to probably look green, but let's see what happens. Oh, it's not too bad. I didn't take too much. If you take too much, you'll get a green color right away here. This Phthalo Blue is very strong. And we're not after the green yet. I'm just trying to get my orange a little bit more dull, and I feel like I've succeeded now. It's a bit more dull. So that's a nice dull color, but there's no reason you have to dull it down. If you like vibrant, intense oranges, just skip the Phthalo Blue. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to just, that's supposed to be clean water, but my brush is clearly not clean. But I'm going to take a little more of my yellow, and I'm just going to go ahead and make a slightly deeper, darker orange. So I'll go ahead with the yellow again, and then more red, only I'm going to put more of the, I'm saying red, but this is Quinacridone Rose. But really any red would work, so that I get a deeper, kind of more of a reddish orange color. And once again, I'm going to dull mine down with a little bit of my Phthalo Blue, but there's no reason that you can't leave it vibrant. I might even add a little more red, actually, because I feel like I could probably even be a little more on the red side. I don't know, that's a pretty orange color, but I'm just gonna go a little more red. Just, that's a matter of preference. You don't have to go that red. Okay, so there's a few colors for us to get started with. And then what I'm gonna do is just use my dirty brush as is, and a little water. I'll mix just a bit of this color, the orangey color, over into my yellow so that I have more of a golden color, just kind of with what's on my brush. I know, so messy. I work this way. If that drives you crazy, like I say, grab another palette. This in the well here, right here, it's dried out, but let's reconstitute it with a bit more water. I can tell you it's pretty much a color that's made with the same things we've been using, which is the yellow and the red, or the Hansa Yellow Deep and the Quinacridone Rose. And you can see clearly it's more on the vibrant reddish side. And once again, if we want to dull it down, I can come over here, take a little Phthalo Blue and dull it down. So then we have a darker color there. And if we want to get even more on the brown side, we can do that in another well. Why don't we just go ahead and do this? We'll take a little bit of the yellow once again, and we'll mix it over here. And this time we're aiming for more of a brown color, so we can actually put a little bit more of the phthalo blue in there. But we'll start with our same mixture, the yellow, then the rose. And you can see we're very, very vibrant, but we're gonna dull that down with more phthalo blue and hopefully get more of a brownish color. And I'll show you a sample page too of the colors I have. No reason you have to be identical to what I have though. So that time you could see I added more phthalo blue. We got more on the brown side. I think we've got some really pretty colors going, and I'll keep mixing a little bit as I go. Actually, maybe why don't we do a purpley color too? Now you can see in my palette here, I do have some dried out green. This green is mainly made with my Hansa Yellow Deep and my phthalo blue, and then I usually add a little bit of red to dull it down. We can talk about our greens in a little bit though. But before we move on, I want to just make a tiny little bit of purple. So I'll go ahead and start out with my red this time. This is the rose, and then I'm going to throw just a tiny bit of the phthalo blue, and then at the very end, I'll show you how I dull it down. You're probably starting to see a pattern here. When you only work with the right 3 primary colors, you can create nearly endless color mixtures. But the beautiful thing is that it's easy to make your color mixing decisions because you only have those 3 colors to choose from. So you're going to mix 2 primaries to get a secondary color, like I've done with the purple here. And then when I want to mute it or dull it down, I take that 3rd primary, in this case it's yellow, and we're going to get a more dull purple. Okay, let's test it. So it's quite dull. Now, if you want it a little more vibrant, easy enough to get that more vibrant again. If you just put a little bit more of the red, a little more of the blue, you'll get a little more vibrant. Let's just take a little more blue. Like I say, up to you how dull or vibrant you want things. If you want to keep things vibrant, you only mix 2 primaries together. If you want to start dulling things down, that's where you introduce all 3 primaries like I've been doing today. So there you go. There's a more bluey purple. Put a little more red. Like I say, there's not a right or wrong here. I'm just kind of going, maybe we want to get it kind of more like an eggplant or just a plum color. Not too much different than I had before, but I actually don't mind that. I think I'm going to just go with that. If I really wanted it vibrant, I would just have to keep adding more of my primaries, the primary red, primary blue, but I'm happy with these colors, so I'm going to get started. I realized I forgot to show you my final mixtures, so I'll just do that really quick here. This is partway through the video, so these are not exact, but they're close. So I've got the golden yellow, then I've got an orange that's kind of on the medium, somewhat gold orange side. Then slightly darker orange here. This one is losing its concentration, so just be aware. I think I was a little more concentrated. I went a little heavier there to try and show that. Then a red that I would use kind of after that. Kind of an orange red, that touch of brown in it. Then we have our brown and a nice vibrant green, which I end up dulling down throughout the video because I decide I want to have a little bit of a duller green. And then I also do brighten up my purple a little bit as well, so I have something a little more vibrant. So I'm going to go ahead with this simple leaf here, and because this one is on our Arch watercolor paper, 140-pound cold press, it will allow me to do some layering. So I'm going to do that with this one where I lay down my first layer, I'm going to let it dry, then I'll come back in and add some other things. So some of our paper, the cheaper paper, I don't do as much layering, but because I'm using the more expensive paper, I will do a bit of layering on this particular leaf. And you can see there, I had a little red in my brush. It's very, very faint, but you can see a little bit of red. That's okay. That amount isn't going to harm anything. So I'm just filling that in with water, and I'm going to do this one wet on wet. So filled that with water. Then I'm going to come in and start with my brightest yellow first and work my way into the darker colors. So I'll just come around here, and I'm going to do the edge of the leaf first. But because I am going to fill this in, I do want a lot of yellow and golden colors in this one. I will kind of fill the whole thing. Just come in, do that center vein. Might as well get this nice and bright and intense. That's one thing too to know. The higher quality paper generally will absorb more pigment and your intensity will stay better for you. But let's go ahead. Maybe we'll skip this orange color because it's close enough to what we have, and we'll just go into this one over here. And we're going to do the edges and the stem. So do the stem. Oh, I actually could have had a little bit of in-between gold color, but that's okay. We're going to put a little brown on there after. So I'm just coming around the edge of the leaf using the tip of my brush and letting things, I'm just kind of like dropping it and letting it kind of create this pattern, or just almost bleed around. You can see that. So I'm just doing that to the edge of this one. And we'll see, we can go ahead and put these veins in here as well while it's wet. They're not going to hold their shape very well because we're very wet, but that's where we can come in and decide if we want to add some more detail or finer veins at the end. So we're just going to do this very lightly, something like that. I might even drop a little bit of water into the mix just to kind of let things bleed around, almost like, I don't know, it will blend it a little bit more. But yeah, I'm going to do that. Maybe, do we want a little bit of brown in there? I'm thinking so. I'm feeling like this is too vibrant for me. I like the dullness at fall. So I'm going to come in here and probably put a little brown and a little purple. The purple is going to really take things into the dull state in a hurry, but the brown will be kind of an in-between. Yeah, I'll have to soak that out. And I am using the Artegria round brush for this, which is dropping more water in here than if I was using a firmer brush. Keep that in mind. The brush you use is going to have an impact too. Okay, yeah, the color's really nice and dark, and it's turning us into the browns because we didn't really, I'll show you how to maintain your purple look if you want purple, but because we've got so much yellow in here and orange, it's just going really, really dull really fast because we're mixing the colors. And I'll show you how to maintain the purple if you want to maintain the purple. We'll do that in another leaf. I feel like I'm getting almost too wet and drippy and messy. I'm going to just let this one dry. And like I say, this is where I can layer because I do have a better quality paper. Let's just bend that or tilt it around a little bit and let the colors mingle. And we're going to move on to another leaf. I'll be doing sort of the same color combinations, I think, with this one. Might go a little bit more golden with them, but I'm going to just lift some of the pencil lines because I don't want these to show through. And with this, I'm using the cheaper paper. And so I'm going to want to hit everything in one layer. So I'm going to do things a little bit differently. I'm going to show you how I get my veins finished in this particular layer. So I'm going to turn it that way. I think that's the way I intended for it to be when I originally drew it. And this time I'm going to come in here once again with my yellow. You could say with these, I'm just going to paint wet on dry. I'm going to come directly onto my paper. I'm not even wetting anything first. We'll just fill these in. We'll let those two bleed together. Once again, I'm still using the Artegria round brush. And I'm running out of my kind of golden yellow color, so I'm getting a little bit closer to just having hence a yellow deep on my brush, but that's okay. I'm going to use a little bit of brown now, and I'm going to maybe even skip those other colors, just get the brown on. I'll use it at the tip. And then I'm going to do these veins. I'll do this vein, and then I'll show you what I'm going to do with my veins in a minute here. Put this on here. I just drop some along the edge a little bit as well. I want to move fairly quick. Things are going to dry faster with this paper, and I want to get my veins finished. So for my veins, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the end of this brush, or what do I have here? I have this mechanical pencil. I could just pull the lead out and just use the pencil and do some veins like that. So either way, you basically are going to be denting your page either with your pencil or with the end of a brush. Then I'll come in and drop a little bit more of that brownish color in a few places, or the yellow, because I want the paint to settle into the crevices of this paper. This worked really beautifully when we used granulating paint, and like I say, I'll include a link to that video below because you might have fun with that. So now I'm just going to drop a little bit more of the brown on top of my veins. Oh, I'm drying out there. Can you see that? I'm just going to add water to that first because we're drying out. Add water to that one. And this, I find that you can almost automatically get more blooms and puddles happening with the cheaper paper because it dries pretty quick. You'll see things kind of get a little bit bloomy easier, but I'm going to just drop a little bit more brown, basically on top of the veins. And I feel like I'm almost drowning in water here. And so I might give it just a quick little minute to soak in or absorb some of that water out. Maybe I'll just use a thirsty brush. I'll just soak it out with my thirsty brush. Like so. And then I think I might try and drop water the same way I did with the granulating pigments. You know what? I want to have enough paint first. So I'm going to drop a little more yellow. This is looking anemic over here. Just drop a little more of my yellow in here. Oops, I'm spraying things around. Okay, so what I'm going to do is let this just sit for a minute, and then I'm going to drop a little bit of water. This one is looking like it's drying already. So with this one, I think I can do that. I'm going to just drop some clear water into here and see if I get some interesting little effects and blooms happening. It's kind of working over here. You can kind of see that. I think with these other leaves, I need to give them just a little minute. And I find you get some interesting effects on cheap paper because it doesn't allow the pigment to disperse the same way, but I'm very puddly right now, so it may not work completely well here. I'm going to soak a little bit of this out. Tip of my brush. Yeah, I'm actually happy with how that one's working. I feel like the blooms are working. So this one's just way too wet. Let's just soak it out so we can make this work. Soak the paint out because we're drowning over here. I'll put a little more paint in this time. You could also use a brush that holds less water. The Artegria round holds a lot of water, but you can almost see I'm getting some interesting things happening already on the edge of that leaf. I'll drop a little more brown in, drop the brown into, once again, the veins, and make sure I'm not too wet. I think it's not too wet this time, so I think I'm going to be able to do the drop method where I rinse my brush off. Sorry, my water is just right here, just rinsing it off. So I've got a clean brush and I just want a little bit of water. And then I'm going to just drop the water on top of here. And I tried this on our Arch watercolor paper. It didn't work as well because it, like I say, it almost keeps you from getting blooms. It's made beautifully, which is most of the time I don't want the blooms, but if I want the blooms, cheaper watercolor paper actually lends itself well to that. It's kind of working. It's a little puddly, it's a little bit bloomy. I'm really happy with how it worked on this particular leaf. I'm going to let it dry, and we're going to try this technique again on one of our other leaves in a bit. So I'm going to let that dry, and when it's fully dry, we'll come back to it and just see what we think about it. If you're enjoying today's video, I would love to invite you to join my free newsletter. In it, you'll find creative inspiration and be the first to know about new tutorials, classes, and workshops. If that sounds like something you'd enjoy, you can find a link in the description below. Now let's get back to painting. All right, so this is dry now, and I am quite happy with that actually. I think it turned out almost better than I expected. I feel like I like that texture that we got in there, and that worked well, even though we didn't use granulating paint, because we had a smoother paper, a cheaper paper. It tends to just bloom or get a little bit of those funny, interesting edges, almost more naturally, which sometimes you don't want. But if you're looking for that, sometimes cheaper paper can work. So let's go ahead now and do the same thing with this, only we'll use some different colors. We're going to use our purple, maybe some of the more reddish color, and the orangey color here. Things have dried out a little bit in the palette, which is fine, but you will notice things are looking a little bit drier. And with this, I'm going to do the same method for the leaves. I'm going to do the dented paper, but I'm going to come in this time and do the dents first. So I have here, you could use, like I say, something like that pencil. This time I'm going to just use the end of this paintbrush because it's got a nice tip to it as well. So I'm going to just go ahead and quickly dent. You wouldn't actually have to do this whole stem part, just the veins. We'll just go ahead and dent them. And I will show you other methods for doing veins besides the dent method, but I do like this method when I'm not planning to come back in with more layers, because this does automatically give you veins without really trying. Of course, you can't see what you're doing exactly, and when you do these are permanent because you've just dented the paper. But I can then go ahead with my eraser and lift some of the pencil out, and it's not going to affect those veins. So I'll just lift a little bit with my kneadable eraser. You know what, maybe something a little bit harder. I'll get more of that pencil out. Doesn't really matter if it's in there, but if the pencil, I realized if the pencil is actually on a different, slightly different place than the dent is, it'll show. So just do that. Alrighty, let's go ahead now and paint this. I'm going to use a Simply Simmons brush this time. It's going to hold less water and it's going to make these leaves just naturally less wet, because that Artegria brush does drop a lot of water in, which is beautiful, but I'm wanting to do a wet on wet technique, and this paper obviously doesn't absorb as much water, and so let's just give it less. Because it doesn't absorb, sometimes it does dry faster, but I want to, I think, start drier. We'll see as we go. So I just went ahead and wet that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of follow what I did last year with this leaf. I like how I've got the more purpley reddish color at the ends, and then the rest of it's more orange. So I'm just going to go in and fill this with our orange. Just put it in the center area of these. And then I'll come in and do a little bit more of the reddish orange. And you can see this is a little bit less vibrant, this color, because, as you know, I did put some of that phthalo blue in there. And this is a little less red, and that's okay. I'm just going to go ahead, fill those. Then I'll come in with the more reddish color here. And I'll just fine tune, and I'm going to move my paper around so that I can access. I think for the tips, I might even want to go back and use my Artegria. We'll see. Let's see. The Artegria does give a nicer tip to these leaves. If you work fast enough. Yeah, not as crazy about the tip I'm getting. Like it's a little more of a struggle with this one. So maybe we'll just switch over. I'll use a smaller Artegria though, because that'll help us get away with a little less water too. Or I should say we'll hold less water. There's a nicer tip there. And you can let yourself have a little bit of shakes if you want. It'll give the leaf a nicer finish. You don't really want them to look perfectly contrived, and that's where if you just let yourself jiggle a little bit as you do the outline of the leaf, it actually can make it look a little more natural. And then I will come in and do a little bit of purple, just kind of at the very tips. And I'm not worrying about the fact that these are bleeding together. I'm okay with that. And just come in here. Let's go ahead and do these stems with the same color. And then I'll come in with the purple and just deepen those a little bit. And we can always come in and afterwards if we want more the purple color in our veins. We can. I'm not sure how much I want to put in there because it's going to look brown and muddy. So let's just quickly, in these ones that are wet, drop some of the purple in there. It'll probably look a little less muddy with being a little more red, but I'm going to move fast because I can tell things are drying, and I'm going to get some funny blooms here. I might have to add a little more of the reddish color just to get things to flow the way I want them to, because I can tell I'm going to have some, one, muddiness because of the amount of yellow that I still have in my mixtures, but two, I don't think I'm going to be, there we go. Let's use this reddish color and put a little bit more down. Kind of do an intermediate color between the purple and the orange. And then I will have to add some water because you can see I'm too dry. Ooh, I like how that's filling the veins though. Okay, let's just go ahead, do that reddish color, let it fill the veins, and then I'll add a little bit of water like we did before because like I say, you can get a little bit of that granulating look, even though we're not using granulating paints, by dropping water on the cheaper paper. So put a little bit more of that. Very, very little bit of it on the veins. I know it's looking really weird right now, but we're going to drop some water and get that to all kind of even out a little bit. So now I'll just drop water anywhere that it's looking like it's not quite wet anymore. So we're getting hard edges. We're just dropping that water in. And that's going to naturally allow that purpley brown color to just bleed out into the veins a little bit more. Dab my brush off when I'm drowning. Yeah, I think I'm happy with this. I wonder if I want to add a little bit more of that. Just drop it a little bit more in the veins, and then a little more water. We're not going to get perfect veins here because we are doing this wet on wet and we're using this cheaper paper. But I do like where it's kind of bleeding like that. You can see that happening, right? Then I'll just drop some water in and we'll see what we get. Because like I say, it's a little bit different with different papers. Yes, I like that when I drop the water in. I like the effect I'm getting with this. It's acting, like I say, a little bit like a granulating paint would on a more expensive paper. But we were also going to go ahead and get the smoother look in some of our other leaves here in a minute. Just make sure the water stays more or less even. Okay, I think I'm okay with that. We can always come back in and do just a little bit more vein work if we're not quite happy with the way this one is working. I'm just going to kind of tilt it around. I don't feel like the veins worked quite as well as I would have liked, but I don't think I should try and pull them at this point. We'll just let it do its thing as it dries, and we can come back and decide what we want to add to that after. Okay, I'm excited to do this oak leaf, and I think I'm going to use that same technique. I think with this one, it will work better. I think our veins will show up better, so I'm just going to go ahead and do the little dent thing again, and then we get to have some fun painting. And we will mix up some green for this one as well. You can use a ready mixed green, but since I'm planning to teach you mixing fall colors, we might as well just do that really quick here. So I will take some of our yellow, bring it over to here. Yes, my yellow is dirty, but for the most part, you can see it's not bad. It looks dirtier than it's acting. You can see the messiness in there, but we'll just start with our yellow. And then we're going to take a little bit. You could take a ready-made green, like I say, but you can take some phthalo blue and mix that into your yellow. And then we are going to put a tiny bit of red just to dull things down. So we're going to do that next. I wonder if I'm going to need more of that. I don't know that I will because I'm just using just enough for the oak leaf. I don't think I'm going to, ooh, is that too much red? Let's see. Nope, we're okay. I made a nice neutral green. So you can see when I do that final tap of the other color, like when I've mixed the two primaries, the yellow and the blue, to make my green, then when I want to dull things, I don't need much of it. So let's go ahead and try this. And what I'm going to do with this one, I'm actually going to start with the yellow. I often like starting anything I paint with the yellow and then adding the other colors. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to use this brush, once again, the Artegria. And I'm not doing a very persnickety job coming to the edge. I'm just quickly filling it in with water. So the edges will get fine-tuned at the end. And I'm going to get a few colors going, so I'm really excited to try this one. So we've got that on there. And then I'm going to come into my yellow. I'll just use yellow and maybe a little bit of the gold color on my brush. I should put a little bit of that, just a little bit with my yellow because I'm running out of that color. I'll just put a little bit more in there. And then I'm going to come and fill the whole area in, except the center. I'm going to be eventually going with green. So I'm just going to come kind of like so, fill this area in really quick, and you can see how it bleeds almost on its own. Maybe we'll do the red next, then we'll come in and fill the green at the very end. So just fill that up. And then I'm going to take a smaller Artegria brush, and I'm going to come into this reddish color. And if it's acting too strong, I can always back off into this other orange here, but let's mainly use this and see how it works. So I'm going to come around the edges and try not to have it bleed too much. I'm not really lifting my brush as much because I can tell I'm wet enough. If I tap and lift my brush too much, this color is going to end up going too crazy. So let's just, I'll show you what I mean. Like if I really am loaded and then I tap a lot, you can see I'm like drowning it. So it's really a matter of just not overdoing it. You can tap, just make sure your brush is not overloaded. Mine is, that's why I had to kind of keep moving because I could tell I had so much paint on my brush. I was like, ooh, I'm going to have a big mess if I just start lifting my brush and tapping it too much. I could have just dabbed it on my paper towel. All would have been well, but I went crazy and just kept going. Alrighty, so I'm going to lift a little bit right there where I was showing you what not to do. We'll just lift a little bit of that out. This Simply Simmons brush is good for lifting because it does hold less water, so it means it absorbs more of that water out of the painting as well. We'll put a little bit more of the yellow color in here. Just a little, tap it in there. And if you want that red to move around a little bit, you can come. This is a good time to tap a little bit of water in, spread it around. We are going to come in with that green though in the same layer. We're just not going to touch our yellows, sorry, our reds and our greens together. So get that on there. And then we'll come in, take our green color, and I'm just going to go like this, kind of down the center, basically on the veins. That's what I want to go. So don't want to be too wet. This brush is working well for that. Just come down and tap it over the vein, and then I'll tap it over these other veins here. And because we dented dented the paper, it should show up okay. If it doesn't, we can always come back and try and dent it a little bit heavier, but I think we're going to be okay. I think it's leaking in there on its own. Let's see. I can always push it. The other thing I can do is make a slightly darker green. Yeah, this is helping to come on top. I think it works better to do this. Oops, I need to be careful doing this right now because I want to stay on the same line that I made earlier, right? We don't want like double veins here, so I have to be careful about that. But it does actually work to do it while the paint's wet. It feels like it's actually pushing it in better. And I might even make this a little darker. I'll just take a little bit more phthalo blue, mix it into here. So we've got a deeper green now, and I'm just going to tap a little bit more. Ooh, that's a lot. But again, holding my brush down if too much is coming off at once. This is almost too vibrant a green in my opinion. It doesn't look overly fallish, but that's okay. We can dull it down if we want to a little bit. We'll just add a little more red. Okay, that's better. Maybe actually make it even more red than what I want it because I've gone greener than I want. So by putting extra red, it will dull it down more than I want to because I'm, like I say, I'm too vibrant a green. So try and counteract it by going a little bit more on the brown side. Unless you like that vibrant green, go for the vibrant green. Okay, overall I'm happy with that. I think I'm going to drop a little bit of water. The water won't bloom around quite the same way on this paper as it did on the cheaper paper, and we are also using, like I say, non-granulating paint. So the combination of non-granulating paint with the more expensive paper like Arches or Arche is going to get us not having as much texture here. So that's probably as much texture as it's going to get. I went a little bit out of the line there, but not too bad. I think that's a pretty leaf. It is very vibrant, but it's still pretty. So let's go ahead and do our last leaf. I think for this final leaf, I'm going to make it more red, and I'm going to use the red color here, the purple color, and maybe a little bit of this orangey color in there, the darkest orange that we have here. So maybe I will just go ahead and fill the whole thing in. And I actually I may end up doing the pressing the paper again for the veins on this one, just because it works well, but I will show you too that you could come on wet on dry after. I'm going to show you that with this one because you can see it's in the middle of drying right now and we've clearly not maintained those veins. So I'm going to come back on that one and do that there. So I might do the denting the paper method here. So what we'll do is go ahead and just get some of this color, the orangey color, kind of in the middle of this, just so we have some variety. And as you can see, this is not super orange, it's kind of a browny reddish orange. Then I'll come in with this darker color and we're going to do all of the tips of this. We're going to get this nice and a beautiful deeper looking red. And I definitely want the Artegria brush for this because this is, I've got so many tips, nice fine tips to these little leaves here. And I'm just going to move my paper however it's comfortable too. And as you could see, once again, I did not wet things up to the very edges. That allows me to get this more intense red, but it also saves me having to come up with the detail, you know, fine detail with the water. You don't need that fine detail with the water or something like this because we're working fast enough. A little bit down here. And make sure I get this before it dries funny. This is the Arches or Arch watercolor paper, and so it will give us a smoother effect again. So if we want texture, we have to kind of force it a little bit. All right, I think I'm mostly happy with that. Could have had a little more red down here, but I'm so wet and puddly, that's why the red's not staying. So I can just soak some of that up a little bit with my thirsty brush and put a little more in there, but I definitely want to get in here with the purple, and that's going to give us a lot of beauty. So let's maybe, you know what? Yes, let's do the purple, and then we can see that we might be able to drag the purple down the veins a little bit, depending on how it behaves. We could make our purple more vibrant as well. I'm wondering if we should do that, because this purple is pretty dull. Part of it is that we're putting it on top of yellows, and purple and yellow will automatically kind of cancel each other out. But if we do want to make our purple a little more vibrant, we can just take a little bit more of our yellow, or sorry, our red and our blue, and we will get a little bit more of a vibrant purple again. So let's see. Drop it at the tips. And I know it almost looks black. I'm going to be adding some water to move it around. Well, you can see there, it's definitely moving around a lot. I might even have to lift a little bit. I came in with such intense purple. But let's see. Let's come instead of adding more water, let's come in with our red. We'll take a little bit more of the quinacridone rose, mix it into this red color here, and some water. And then I'm going to drop that color in, kind of like right beside the purple, and you're going to see what happens. It's going to give us an intermediate color. So I'm going to just drop it like so all the way around here, get the purple to move around. If some of the areas are just way too intensely purple, I will lift a little bit. Like I'll show you in some of the areas if I'm not happy with it in a minute here. As you can see, I'm almost just kind of dragging that purple around a little bit with the extra red on my brush. I'm pulling it more to the center. Okay, now let's try. I think I'm actually okay with that. I don't know. If you don't like how purple it is, don't follow me into this. I think I'm going to try and drag from the tip of the leaf downwards with my pencil, trying to follow where those lines are. And you can see I'm pulling the purple color into the veins all the way down, and I really like that. Again, there's no lead in this pencil. We're just dragging. Oof. I didn't really follow the vein very well there. Makes it look a little weird. Okay, let's keep going this way. So we kind of keep pulling that purple downwards. Bringing that purple up this time. I think I do like this. Another vein there. I think there was, yeah, I'm not exactly where my pencil lines are, so it would have been a good idea to make sure I was completely rid of my pencil lines before I did this technique, because I didn't follow them exactly, but I do like that. And I actually don't mind the purple. It might be a little intense in some places. It's almost like a purple black, but overall, I think I'm pretty happy with that. And that was super easy. I'm going to go ahead and add some simple small veins here. I'm going to use this Artegria round. It's a number 3. And I'm going to try maybe a mixture of the purple, because my purple now is more vibrant. I might do the purple and the brown together, because I think the purple by itself might be just a bit, maybe a bit too vibrant. We'll see. Let's do this mixture and see what we think of it. And this is a nice little brush that helps me get fine lines. And you're going to see the difference here between putting the veins on, you know, with the pressure technique or doing it this way. And you can see I'm even kind of skipping a little bit, like with that one. I didn't get a perfect solid line. And if I can see the veins, it probably would be smart for me to try and trace what I have there. Some of them are pretty much disappeared, right? So, or they never really came through in the first place. So it won't matter if I'm off my original lines, but be aware of that because you can tell I've already kind of slopped with that in other places. So just go ahead and do these side ones. Again, a nice fine tip is very helpful. You could use a wringer brush for this as well. And you could have kind of a skipping or a broken line. I like where I've done that, where it's just so fine that it sometimes doesn't even show. So do a few here. Just do very, very light pressure so that we get just almost like suggested veins here. I don't like that first one. And you can see moving my paper around so that I achieve, it's a bit heavy, but moving it around so it's easier, doing whatever hand position is easiest. All right, I'm happier with that now. So I'll go ahead and do this one, and I'll show you, you could do the exact same thing that I did here with the veins, or if you want, you can kind of do a little bit of an edge softening technique. So let's do that just for something different. You can do whatever you prefer, and I'm gonna go with the brown this time rather than the purple brown. So I'll just come straight into the brown, and I'm gonna do one side of this to start with. So I'll come over and I'm doing a little heavier pressure. I'm gonna move fast. I'll show you what I mean. So you can see I'm going heavy. Ooh, that was heavier than I wanted. I wanted to go heavy, not quite that heavy, because I'm going to soften the edges. So I wanted to have a little bit more pigment, and I'll show you what I mean by softening the edges. I'm going to come onto the left side of each vein and just soften things, bring it out, come over here. So I'm going to start here, but I'm not going to touch this vein now. I'm just going to touch up to here. Do you see what I just did? I touched the left side of this vein. Do not touch the right side of the vein beside it. You're going to be able to get kind of a blended look. Do the same thing. So I'm wetting it, coming up to there, and then blending it down. This is just another way you can do veins that gives just a little bit more interest. Actually, I want to soften. You can see it's getting a little dry. I want to soften along this top vein a bit too. Just be careful, kind of tap a little bit with the water to kind of pull that downwards a little bit. And then over here, once again, if I'm too dry, I might have to just drop a little bit more brown into that. Encourage it to move around. And last of all, I'll do that here. So I'm gonna let this dry before I do this side, otherwise we're gonna have things bleeding around quite a lot. So I'll quickly dry it. I might even use the hair dryer to get that dry, and then we'll do this side quick. All right, so I've dried this, and I'm gonna do the same thing on this side now. And I could, the thing you can do, I'm just gonna make these a little bit less bold, I think, than what I did before. And you could do those smaller veins that I had drawn originally. Makes it a little more challenging, so I think doing it in a second layer might be better. But I'm just going to go ahead and just soften. So I'll put some water above and bring it up to here and soften that out. And I'm not worrying about bringing that center vein, like blending it around. It's dry, and I don't want to have it really bleeding into this side. So I'm going to try and move that around quickly. And yes, these are drying so fast, they're not bleeding. So I'm just going to add the water as if they were bleeding. Then I'll come back in and just encourage them a little bit with a little bit more paint. Obviously this brush is just dry enough. It's kind of, again, I tried to leave that like lighter area on the other side of the vein there. I'm just doing this pretty quick and sloppy, but just to kind of show you how you can create a little bit of variety in your veins here. So then down here where it is dry, you do want to add those extra little bits there. You could soften it. Could get a little bit where you could end up lifting more than you want to by this stage, so be careful. But if you have those veins showing through with your pencil and you want to blend them out, that's how you can quickly kind of do that. Just soften on the left side of each of the veins. It's getting a little bit wonky here, but you can kind of see it's added a little bit more detail. Always come in and attach those a little bit more coherently. Just blend out a little bit if you need to. Just something like that. Just tap it a little bit to blend it. Anyways, and yeah, you could do the same thing up here once this top part's dry if you want to add those kind of second smaller veins on there, like you can see that one here. But if you do it right now, well, it's damp. You can, but it will bleed out both directions, right? So you do that. It's damp enough that it's not bad. If you're damp and you get it bleeding out both directions, it's not terrible. But you can decide what you want to do with that. If you want to come in and you know, dry that and do another layer to get those veins up there more refined. I'm happy with how mine is looking like that. So I'm just going to leave it. And I can see I went a little out of the lines, but not a big deal. You can just use your scrub brush if you want to and clean that up a little bit if you have a problem like I do. Just wash and dry the brush, scrub a little bit, and then I'll blot it with a paper towel. Oof, it's bleeding out a bit. It's wet. So sometimes you have to wait till everything's dry to do that because you can end up with a worse mess. It's not too bad. We'll leave it like that. And there we have all our beautiful fall leaves. If you've enjoyed today's video, you'll want to check out my fall playlist where you can find more tutorials like this one. In the meantime, I hope this video has brought a little taste of God's beauty and peace into your everyday life, and that it's inspired you to continue enjoying your own creative journey. See you again soon. Bye!